Welcome to Seven Trumpets Prep. Guys, in this video today I've got a very special friend with me, Aime. And, we're going to talk about suicide prevention. Actually, she's going to talk about that. I've got a few things I'd like to share here and there, but just a real quick note before she starts is I have a lot of friends that are very near and dear to me. I don't have any brothers or sisters, and a lot of them, they went on to the military and, they've seen a lot of things and had to come back and deal with that. Unless you're in those shoes, you don't know. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, I know what you're going through, but they have no idea what they're going through. And there's some things I'll bring up about that later, but she's going to bring up a lot of the points, that signs, symptoms, things to look for, because later down the road when stuff starts happening, whether it's Seven Trumpets Revelation or war with Russia or heaven only knows, depression's something that gets to people. And not only that, suicide is a factor. And there's just so many things that can compile up to that point. I mean, right now, people are doing it while times are still good. So with that said, I'm going to let Aime tell you a lot about it.
Okay, I made a list. I'm just reading off of my list about different signs and symptoms. If someone, even like it could be a friend, a family member, it doesn't matter, or even somebody that you just kind of know, sometimes you can just pick up little hints that they might be dropping that there is something wrong. So I'm just going to read off some signs and symptoms for you. Number one is if they're talking about wanting to die or hurting themselves. Number two is feeling empty, hopeless, or saying they don't have a reason to live. If they're making a plan, such as buying excessive firearms, pills, searching for death online. If they feel guilty about something, or if they're talking about shame. If they feel like they're trapped, like there's no solutions to any of their problems. Or if they're in unbearable pain, like if they've got chronic pain, such as, it can even be emotional, it can be physical, it doesn't really matter. Both of them can really hurt somebody, and it can affect the way that they feel. And if you don't feel good, you're not going to want to be alive. If they feel like they're a burden to others, using substances such as drugs or alcohol. If they seem extra anxious or agitated. If they have been withdrawing from their friends or their family or even activities that they used to participate in. If they have a change in their eating habits or sleeping habits. If they have a sudden burst of rage or they talk about revenge. If they start doing risky behaviors such as risk-taking, reckless behaviors, driving really, really fast. Talking or thinking about death. Displaying mood swings, such as they could go from being really, really sad to really happy all of a sudden, or really calm. And that's one of the big warning signs, because that means they may have made a plan and they're going to go through with it in their head and they're at peace with everything. So that's a big thing you have to watch out for. Giving away their possessions, saying goodbye to their family or friends, making a will, loss of interest in things that they once held near and dear. Or being unwilling to seek help due to stigma. There's a lot of stigma around suicide or thoughts of harming yourself, because people are like, oh, nobody's going to understand, or they're just going to put me in a program and they're not really going to listen to me. And that's the whole point, is these people need to be listened to. They need help, and that's what we need to do, is be there for them. And it doesn't matter how old you are. Suicide can affect the very young or the very experienced on up in the years. It doesn't matter. There is no age limit to this. And it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. Native Americans, Alaskan Natives, non-Hispanic whites, those are the highest to commit suicide, but still every culture has suicides. Everyone is affected by this. And some risk factors that may contribute to it or attribute to it is depression or mental disorders like bipolar, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, antisocial or anxiety disorders. If something stressful has happened to them in their lifetime, like a death just occurred or a divorce just happened, that can actually trigger suicide. Or even if it's like a prolonged stress, such as bullying at schools or unemployment. If someone's been unemployed for a really long time, that can be a big risk factor. Medical conditions that might cause pain, like chronic pain, like we talked about earlier. If somebody's hurting, you're not going to understand. Like, I could punch Luke and Luke could tell me what that pain felt like, but I really wouldn't understand what he was going through at that time. Prior prior attempts of suicide is a higher risk factor. A family history of substance abuse or mental disorders. A history of suicide in the family. Family violence or abuse, that includes both sexual and emotional and physical abuse. All of those abuse factors can attribute to someone wanting to commit suicide. Having guns or firearms in the home actually does increase the rate of suicides. Recent release from prison or jail, exposed to other suicidal behaviors as well. And that's just some of the risk factors. And some protective factors that can actually help someone from preventing, or it's going to help them not commit suicide, would be social and family support. If they feel like people are there for them, they are going to be much less likely to actually commit suicide. If they have problem solving and conflict resolution skills, because sometimes whenever you are in a really bad place, you might not always think about all the different options that you have. You may only see that one way out, and you really need to have those skills in place to be able to talk yourself out of doing anything. Emotional regulation, ability to cope, a positive view of the future can help. Culture and religious beliefs that say that suicide is wrong or suicide's unacceptable. And access to mental health care, which is something that they would need. And this is ways that we can help. This is something that everybody can do. Ask, are you thinking of killing yourself? And I know that seems like a really scary question to ask somebody, but if somebody really feels that way, more than likely they're going to tell you the truth. Yeah, I really am. And this is where you need to jump in there and say, hey, I'm here to help. And you need to keep them safe, be there for them, help connect with others. I've got some numbers on the other side of my paper I'm going to read off, and there's some websites Luke's going to post. Stay connected with that person. Don't leave them. Make sure they're getting the help. And even if they go to a treatment facility, don't just stop talking to them. Try to stay connected. Be there for them. Show them that there is a reason to live. And don't ever put yourself in their shoes and say, oh, well, life isn't bad, you'll get over it, because you don't really know that person's pain. You don't know what they're feeling at that time. So you just need to try to be there and listen, because listening to them is the number one thing that's going to help them. Be there for them. But here's some phone numbers. This is the phone number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's 1-800-273-8255, and that is pretty much 273-TALK. The 8255 spells talk. You also have 1-800-799-4889, and that is for the hearing impaired line. You can also text 838255, or you can chat online at any point in time. There's veteranscrisisline.net /chat or militarycrisisline.net. And here's just a little statistic for you. In 2013, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs released a study that covered suicides from 1999 to 2010. 22 veterans were committing suicide per day, which is one every 65 minutes. And each year, 34,598 people die by suicide, 94 every day. More people die from suicide than homicide. And each year, 395,000 people are treated in the ER for self-inflicting injuries. And here's the big one at the end. Estimated 3.7% of the U.S. population, which is roughly 8.3 million, have thoughts of suicide in the past year. 1% develop a plan, which is around 2.3 million, and 0.5, which is about 1 million, actually attempt and will try to go through with their plans.
Now, if you take what Amy showed you and listed out, there's a perfect example of this, like I was saying about PTSD earlier. This is just one of many examples. And you can also check the link below in the video description as to what I'm talking about. There was an incident that happened, I think it was in Georgia in 1998. A patrol officer had stopped a gentleman, and he became erratic in behavior. And after the officer had a discourse back and forth with him, he went back to his vehicle, pulled out an M1 carbine, and shot the officer and murdered him. Fast forward later, the guy, whenever he was being executed on death row, had absolute remorse for what he done. You know, at the time, he was, you know, he pretty much wanted to be killed, suicide. He was just trying to get it done any way possible. You know, he pretty much, the way that he looked at it, it's almost like he'd been glad the officer shot him. And if you look at the track record, he had served in Vietnam, had PTSD. A lot of the things that was going on wasn't never addressed. He never had nobody to back him up. You know, he was lit when the police found him. He was living in a tent, I believe it was, out in the middle of somewhere from not shortly further out from where he was originally shot, the officer. And so many of these things can be addressed ahead of time to stop people from getting to that point. And I mean, you've worked in the medical profession. I know you see this stuff way more than I can even begin to, but it happens out in society. It happens in, you know, in hospitals. It happens everywhere. Nobody's immune to it. If you get in a situation like that, you can tell when people start to slip. And a lot of times you can stop that before it ever gets too far.
And one thing I've noticed, especially with some of the younger generation, if they say that they're going to do it, it's not a joke. It's usually a genuine statement, and they're saying that because they're saying, hey, I need help. But if you blow it off as a joke, even if they may have said it in a joking manner, don't take it as a joke. You need to really try to be there for them and use the proper channels, because you don't want to wake up that next day and be like, man, I should have helped them, I should have done something, because they might not be there. And I know it's a touchy subject, but my sister's fiance had actually committed suicide earlier this year, and it was really hard for everybody, and it was just something very unexpected, and it was a shock. But suicide affects so many people. You might know somebody that has committed suicide. You might have a family member that's known somebody that's committed suicide, and it's just everybody's affected by it. It's not just one singular incident and then it just goes away. It really spreads, and it really affects everybody.
Yeah, so we hope this video is a help to you. I hope it's a wake up. You know, it happens more than you think. And when hard times comes, I mean, a lot of people, they're not going to want to deal with it. I talk to so many people that's, you know, prepping for things to come, and they're like, I hope I die and I don't have to deal with it, or I'll just off myself. I mean, I've heard some crazy stuff, and I'm like, you know, there's no reason to ever give up. You know, I'm defiant. I want to just keep going just to be spiteful, you know, but that's me. A lot of people, they'll get broke down with time and they give up. And don't ever give up. You know, there's always hope. And above all, there's always hope and salvation in the Most High through faith in His Son, keeping the commandments. Guys, a better world is coming. In the meantime, we got to do the best we can in this world.
And
thanks so much for being with me.
I will say this last part: know that you are loved, that you are appreciated. Above all, we would like to thank our service members, both the police force and our military. We hold you true to our hearts, near and dear, and we do love you, and thank you so much for everything that you've done for us. And just know that we are here for you. That's one of the reasons we really wanted to post that video such as this, is because we want people to know there are options, and that there are people out there that do care about you, and we do appreciate you, and we appreciate everyone, even the viewers, everybody. But just know that if you need somebody to talk to, there are people out there for you, and know that you are loved and appreciated.
Guys, until we see you again here at 7 Trumpets Prepper channel, I hope you have a most blessed day in Yahushua.